Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Debrief on ABC News Live. I'm Kimberly Brooks. Thanks so much for joining us. As you know, Texas is burning, so we're going to have the updates on that massive fire after a chemical plant explosion. We also have the latest on the record-breaking flooding that's happening all over the Midwest, and there's a super bloom in California. But first, your headlines.
Kevin Tsuchihara, head of Warner Brothers movie studio, stepped down following claims he promised roles to an actress with whom he was having an affair.
And the man accused of gunning down reputed mob boss Francesco Cali in New York has made his first court appearance. 24-year-old Anthony Camello raised his hand to show phrases written on his palm, including "Make America Great Again" and "United We Stand." Sources say Cali would not let Camello date his niece, but the motive for that killing remains under investigation.
The president of Mozambique says as many as 1,000 people could have been killed by a hurricane called a cyclone in that country.
Unlike the fanfare of past reveals, Apple has quietly announced new versions of their iPad Air and iPad Mini. It's the first refresh of those products in years. Both tablets feature larger screens, faster processing speeds, and capture high-resolution photos and video.
The way is Trout, he gets that, and he absolutely delivers.
Sorry, Bryce Harper. Looks like Mike Trout will have the largest contract in sports history. The 27-year-old two-time MVP is finalizing a 12-year deal worth more than $430 million with the Los Angeles Angels. Trout was expected to become a free agent in 2020, but this deal may keep him in LA for the rest of his career.
All right, my friends, we're starting with some breaking news. Search warrants related to Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, were just released. Now, these documents are related to the raid on Cohen's home and office back in 2018. So Aaron Katersky is in our New York radio studio, and he's going to break it all down. So, Aaron, you've been going through all of these documents. What did you find, and what stands out to you?
I think the biggest thing that stands out, Kimberly, is the amount of black ink related to the campaign finance violation that was uncovered by federal prosecutors, to which Michael Cohen pleaded guilty, but that is the subject of an ongoing investigation. We know that President Trump has been implicated in that campaign finance violation related to the hush payments to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, two women who had accused President Trump of prior affairs that the president has denied. But the basis, the supporting basis for this campaign finance violation, all of the information is redacted as part of a court order. All of these search warrant affidavits were released today because news organizations, including ABC News, pushed for their release, and the judge agreed, but prosecutors said anything about an ongoing campaign finance violation did need to be blacked out, and indeed was. I think we're learning a couple of other things, though, about Michael Cohen. One, that he was among Robert Mueller's earliest targets. The search warrant affidavits show that the special counsel's office began investigating Michael Cohen in July of 2017, going through some of his emails and the like. And that's just 2 months after Mueller was appointed. So there were early suspicions by the special counsel about Michael Cohen, and all of that was later relayed to federal prosecutors here in New York, who ended up securing the guilty pleas from Cohen. And finally, I think, Kimberly, the other thing we learned is that Michael Cohen, in large part, was brought down by his own greed. At the time he was under investigation, he's $22 million in debt that he owed a couple of banks. He had a side business involving taxi medallions, the metal decals that allowed taxis here in New York City to operate. And as Uber and Lyft and other rideshare companies became more popular, taxi medallion values plummeted. And Cohen was in a pretty significant hole. But he also had a bird in hand. His longtime associate, Donald Trump, had just been elected president of the United States. And Cohen, according to these documents, started shopping himself around as someone who could get access. And he was paid for that, but he was concealing that money from the banks that he owed money to.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, out of my own curiosity, like, how big were these files and how long did it actually take you to look through all of these because they were just released?
They're about 900 pages total.
Wow.
And so I wouldn't say that it's been with a fine-tooth comb, but we knew a lot about Michael Cohen already because he's pleaded guilty and is off to prison in May for some of the crimes that these search warrant affidavits are about. We were hoping to get a little bit more information about the campaign finance investigation that's ongoing, but as I say, Kimberly, those portions were redacted.
All right, Aaron, thanks for combing through those. We appreciate it. So, in the meantime, President Trump is holding a press conference today alongside Brazil's new far-right president, Bolsonaro. So you may not know much about him. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but that's why I want to go to Anya Prusa. She's an associate at the Brazil Institute at the Wilson Center in D.C. So, Anya, Bolsonaro is pretty controversial in his rhetoric and his comments. What should people know about him? What's his background?
So Bolsonaro started his career as an army captain in the Brazilian military. Pretty soon left the military, became a federal congressman for the state of Rio, and basically was in Brazil's National Congress for 27 years before running for president last year.
Okay, so, you know, as we see here on the screen, you know, he's been compared to Trump. He's often referred to as the Trump of the tropics. How are they alike, and what are some of the issues and his stance on significant, like, human rights issues that people should be aware of?
I think this is a really important question, Kimberly. Bolsonaro, in many ways, modeled his campaign for the presidency after what President Trump did here in the U.S. successfully. So Bolsonaro really focused on social media as opposed to more traditional forms of ads, television ads. He didn't participate in really any of the political debates once the campaign was really underway. He had been stabbed, actually, in early September 2018. A little bit more than a month before the first round of elections, and he used that as an excuse not to debate the other candidates. In terms of his rhetoric, like Trump, it's very nationalistic, populist even. He has been strongly anti-elite in terms of his language, saying that the Brazilian political elite has been corrupt and that he is not part of that elite and therefore would be able to bring greater transparency and greater growth to Brazil.
Can you remind people of some of the comments that he has made in the past in regards to gender and race and the LGBTQ community, just so people have an idea?
Yes, so Bolsonaro has a very troubling history of remarks on issues, as you mentioned, race, gender, homophobia, human rights. One of the things that he's well known for saying is to a fellow congresswoman on the floor of Brazil's House. He told her that she did not deserve to be raped. When the press later asked him to clarify, he said she was too ugly to be raped, that she did not deserve it. He has said things like he would rather his son died in an accident than turn out to be gay. And more recently, looking at public security, and this is in part troubling because in Brazil, often there are frequent extrajudicial killings in Brazil. This has been a problem. And violence is a genuine issue. But Bolsonaro has come out and said the only good criminal is a dead criminal, and that he would rather the police, you know, if they think someone's a criminal, you know, to shoot, right? So he wants to increase protections on police who have killed people instead of arresting them and bringing them in to stand trial.
Are any of these things going to come up in the meeting today? What's the purpose of this meeting? What are they trying to accomplish?
So there are a few things that Brazil and the U.S. are certainly going to be discussing today. One of the top issues is going to be Venezuela. As you probably know, Venezuela is in the midst of a crisis and has been for several years, but it's really come to a head recently. The current president of Venezuela was elected recently in elections that many consider to be fraudulent, and so the U.S. has supported an other person for the presidency. And Brazil, being a neighbor of Venezuela, could play a significant role in kind of bringing this crisis to an end. And this is something that Trump and Bolsonaro seem to have a lot of synergy on. They've both called Venezuela's issues the failings of socialism. Bolsonaro has said he does not want Brazil to turn into Venezuela, and he's identified the Brazilian left as being socialist and, implied that if they came to power, they would turn Brazil into Venezuela.
I see.
So we do think that that's going to be a key topic of discussion. Brazil would love to have U.S. support for its bid to join the OECD. And so they're certainly going to see if President Trump would be willing to give his support to that. Another issue might be China. Both President Trump and President Bolsonaro have been skeptical of Chinese influence in their rhetoric, and so we might see some discussions of that.
All right, Anya, I really appreciate it. Thanks for breaking that down for us. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, there was a chemical plant fire that started on Sunday in Texas, and it's still burning, and it could last for days. So I want to go to Marcy Gonzalez, who's in Deer Park, Texas, and she has more.
Hey there, Kimberly. Yeah, you can see these flames just burning out of control at this chemical plant in Deer Park, Texas. We've been out here all morning and actually saw a huge flare up. The flames have gotten much bigger, and we saw first responders kind of expand the area where they're setting up. We actually had to move back farther away from these flames. And fire crews have been out here since this fire started on Sunday. It's burning in several of the tanks here. Those tanks hold some of the chemical components that make up things like gasoline, paint thinner, nail polish remover. And officials are very closely keeping an eye on the air quality. They say right now there's no risk, even being this close to the flames. They say the air is safe to breathe, but that could very easily change. Environmentalists say even the slightest shift in weather could create a risk for people, especially with respiratory issues. There was a lockdown for this area for a time. People were told to keep their windows closed, told not to run their air conditioning. As a precaution, that lockdown has been lifted. Another one of the concerns is just the direction of the wind. The wind right now going in that direction. You can see the huge plume of black smoke, and that is going right towards Houston, where they are keeping a very, very close eye on the situation. Now, schools in this area, some of them were closed yesterday. They have since reopened, but all of the outdoor activities have been canceled as a precaution, especially as some of the neighbors say they have seen some debris falling down in their yards that they believe is from this fire. Now, officials say they will likely have to just let this fire burn out on its own, which could take until tomorrow. In the meantime, fire crews are out here using foam, just trying to keep those flames from spreading to even more containers. And the cause of this fire is still under investigation today, Kimberly.
Wow, those images are completely unbelievable. That's crazy. So I want to move on and get updates on the flooding in the Midwest, which also has some unbelievable imagery. Lots of damage, and 3 people have died. And we have Gio Benitez in Louisville, Nebraska with the latest there. Gio?
Hey there, Kim. Yeah, the waters rose so quickly and there was so much water that people weren't able to see all of the damage till just now, 5 days later. As the waters are receding, now it's revealing how much damage there is. Take a look right here, because 5 days later, again, 5 days, we are still seeing water surrounding that house right there. And so there are some areas that are still flooded, but even when that flooding goes down, they're going to have so much to deal with. I want to show you what we're seeing across the state. More than 2/3 of Nebraska counties are still in a state of emergency right now. 14 bridges have been destroyed. It makes it incredibly difficult to get around. And we know that in some towns, every single road has been damaged. At least 3 people have died so far. Now, this all started because the ground was already frozen from record snow and cold. Then water levels rose in those rivers. The water had nowhere to go. And when the warm-up started, the flooding did too. Officials are really calling this now the most extensive extensive damage this state has seen. So they're going to be dealing with this for the next few months, possibly even longer, as they start cleaning up and start rebuilding. Now, today we're also expecting some rain in this area, and that has people concerned too, because they're looking at that, they're looking at the ground, they're seeing how saturated the ground is right now, and they're worried that that could trigger some more flooding. We know that in other states right now, we are also seeing the potential for flooding. So if you're in those areas, you just have to be extra careful and listen to those evacuation warnings so you don't get stuck in one of these situations. Kim?
Thank you, Gio. Yeah, we're hoping everyone stays safe. So the investigation continues into the Ethiopian plane crash on that Boeing 737 MAX that killed everyone on board. David Curley has a closer look into this. He's in a flight simulator in Canada. David?
Kim, we are in Toronto. This is a simulator for a 737. This is actually the version before the MAX. This is the next gen. There really aren't any MAX simulators that are available to the public. Air Canada has one, Boeing has one in Miami, but American Airlines doesn't get their MAX simulator until December of this year. But we're going to use this to try and show you what happened in the Lion Air crash, the first crash of a MAX. But first, let me give you a little bit of the news. I am told that investigators from the NTSB are going to Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, where the Ethiopians have taken the data from the two black boxes. That means that the analysis from the Ethiopian crash is starting. And while French investigators have told us there are similarities between the two crashes, it's that data will tell us, was there actually something the same that happened, and was it what's called MCAS, which is an anti-stall system, which is new to the MAX. And Aaron Murphy, who's a flight instructor, is going to help us kind of give you a sense of what that would have done in the MAX, in the Lion Air crash, and if it had anything to do with Ethiopia, which we don't know yet. So stalling is when your plane is running out of airspeed and you start to fall out of the sky. Plane doesn't want to do that, either do the passengers or the pilot. And so it's an automatic system that wants to nose down the aircraft to gain airspeed so you can fly again.
Absolutely.
So let's put this into what would be an MCAS. It would automatically, if it's thinking it's stalling, even though you're not, which in Lion Air they weren't stalling, the plane thought they were, the computer thought they were stalling.
Absolutely correct.
So
yes.
it noses down. So
That's
the
right.
yoke on its own, the column, moves forward.
That's right. So the flight controls are going to start reacting. These are my flight controls for the flight path of the aircraft. And I'm feeling a very heavy sensation on these controls as that MCAS malfunction occurs.
Trying to go down.
And we are heading down. You can see it clearly up the front.
Here in Lion Air that they were fighting, pulling back, and having a hard time pulling
and
back.
I'd be on the trim, trying to get the trim to recover from this trim down condition, and it would continue to fight me, and it becomes a really, really heavy seesaw situation, okay? Now I'm going to come back to the most important thing, and I'm going to turn off the stabilizer trim.
Before we do that, so the pilots in Lion Air did not do that. I'm going to turn this back on just to show our audience.
Yeah.
So the idea is, listen, this automation is doing something I don't want it to do. The Boeing procedure, which they pointed out after Lion Air and have talked about and reiterated with all of you, is if you don't like the automation,
the shortest answer is just turn off the automation. You can fly the airplane just fine manually.
All right, so you would turn off the autopilot.
Autopilot off.
And now the tail, the horizontal tail, is what noses us down.
We are still going down because there's a secondary system that's causing this problem. That's the MCAS malfunctioning. I'm coming to the stabilizer trim switches. I just isolated the MCAS by turning that off. Now I have manual control of the aircraft, but I do have to retrim the tail to get the nose to come back up to cruise, or in this case, I want to start climbing again because I'm getting very close to the ground. I'm trimming, trimming, trimming. I can feel the pressures coming out of the control column, and we're safe once again.
Completely manual. You are flying the aircraft.
Old school manual, no autopilot whatsoever, no automated systems except the auto thrust at this point.
Aaron Murphy, thank you very much. That gives you a sense of what they're supposed to do, which is basically shut off the system and fly the aircraft.
Absolutely.
Kim, back to you.
Thank you. So that's a huge tragedy in the air, and yesterday a huge tragedy on the ground in the Netherlands, where there was a deadly terror attack on a tram. Ian Panel is right there in Utrecht where it happened. Ian, authorities are saying that there was no correlation or relationship between the suspect and anyone on the tram. What does that mean? What does that tell us?
Yeah, that's right, Kim. A lot of developments in this case, some information coming out from the police. Before we get into that, I just want to paint the scene here because we've been here most of the day. And what we've witnessed is this incredible coming together of the community here. All ages, all sexes, races and religions coming here to pay their respects to the people who were injured and the people who were tragically killed. if I move out of the way, you can see all the flowers that have been brought to the scene. There's some teddy bears. We've seen a picture of one of the victims of this shooting, a young 19-year-old woman. When we arrived here earlier today, there were probably about a dozen or so bouquets. You can see what the situation is now, and every few minutes or so we've seen children come together, we've seen office workers, people just coming to pay their respects, and the community, as I say, kind of coming together. A primary school teacher, a kindergarten school teacher, has just come and put these pictures which have just been drawn today by the children. Obviously you can see here little rabbit crying, and this is the flag of Utrecht in the background. Really tragic, and it just shows the extent to which this has really affected this community. This is a city, this is a country that is not used to this kind of incident, and as you say, the police are now trying to narrow down exactly what the motive was. What they said is that they've ruled out any possibility of a relationship between any of the victims and the main suspect, the perpetrator. So that therefore puts a lot of attention on whether or not this was a terrorist attack. Now, they're still not saying 100% that it was, but the prosecutor has said that he thinks they found a letter in one of the vehicles that was used by the perpetrator to escape, the main suspect, and that indicates terrorism, and that seems to be where they're leaning. But at the moment, that's not what they've said. If we just go around on this side, you can see where the police are here. This is one of the trams. This is the exact kind of vehicle where the gunman opened fire yesterday. It is now been reopened, but they spent most of yesterday evening forensically going through the scene. They have 3 people in custody, 1 main suspect, all of them questioned in connection with this incident, but still many, many questions about exactly what happened here. Was it terrorism? Was it inspired by what happened in New Zealand, or was it a response to it? That was everybody's immediate fear, and that's a question that still lingers right now. Kim.
All right, Ian, thank you so much. And speaking of New Zealand, very strong words from New Zealand's Prime Minister. She vowed to do everything in her power to deny fame and notoriety to the alleged terrorist who attacked the Muslim community in Christchurch that left 50 people dead. So Will Carr is in Christchurch with the latest. Will?
Good morning, Kimberly. Authorities here in New Zealand and in the United States say there is a real concern about copycats. Both ISIS and Al-Qaeda have also called for retaliation. At the same time, these memorials continue to get bigger and bigger. This is just one that we've seen here in Christchurch. You can see how many flowers are out here. People have been coming. They've been writing messages here on the chalk. You can see the flag of New Zealand here. I see a sticker that says, "Welcome home." Another says, "One love." And then every night, all of these candles are lit for the victims. This is what the Prime Minister says she wants this country and the world to concentrate on. She does not want people to concentrate on the gunman. In fact, she says she'll never say his name again. At the same time, she is pushing to strengthen the country's gun laws. She wants to do that in the next 10 days. That could include a ban on semi-automatic rifles. And since they don't have the Second Amendment here in New Zealand, those sweeping changes could happen very soon. Kimberly.
Thank you, Will. I think it's only appropriate to move on to a little bit of happy news. It's being called the Super Bloom, and it's drawing tens of thousands of tourists in this town in California called Lake Elsinore. Romina Puga is there. So, Romina, can you please show us what all the hype is about?
Hey, Kim. Yeah, I'm here at Lake Elsinore for the Super Bloom. You can see behind me, there is just a blanket of orange poppies covering these hills, and this is a rare occurrence. It has to be the perfect weather combination of tons of rain and low temperatures in the spring for this to happen. I mean, this usually only happens once in a decade. It's happened 2 years ago, though, so this is super rare that it's happening again. As you can see, it's early here, and it is packed with people. We got here a little after 6 a.m., and the parking lot was packed. Tens of thousands of people rolling in every day, and because of that, they actually closed the park on Sunday for a bit. You know, there was too much traffic. Locals were complaining. Over here, I want to show you, people are saying that people are ruining the poppies. smushed here, crushed. This is clearly someone that was doing it for the gram and just ruined these poppies, and this is kind of happening all over the place. So they closed the park on Sunday, but reopened it Monday because the mayor said they just don't have the resources to keep it closed, even though they've been planning for this apparently for 2 months. They added a shuttle service, they added extra parking, but it's just not enough for the amount of people coming. And now they have to reevaluate before next weekend when this is just going to get packed again.
Well, I see why people are showing up. I mean, it looks like a dream. I'm just curious, like, how close is this to Los Angeles?
It looks like candy.
Yes, it does. Where is this in California? I know it's in Lake Elsinore, but what is that by?
About 2 hours south of Los Angeles.
2 hours south of Los Angeles.
Of Los Angeles? Maybe more. It depends where you are in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is big, but yeah, it's Southern California.
Okay, biggest question for you, Romina. Is it worth going, in your opinion? Is it worth it?
It depends how much you love Instagram. That's what I would say. Because it is pretty beautiful. Like, you're not going to get these pictures anywhere else. But it is a hike, and it is a whole thing parking, and I'm sure on weekends it was absurd.
All right, Romina, thank you so much. It looks great. All right, guys, and now a little bit of sad news, well, for your teen self at least. MySpace has lost all of the music it uploaded to its site before 2015. That amounts to nearly 50 million songs by 14 million artists. Additionally, all users' media that was uploaded during the first 12 years of MySpace's existence, like those embarrassing bathroom mirror pictures, has been erased as a result of what the company calls a service mitigation project. Now, maybe the pictures being lost is not that bad, but anyway, RIP to MySpace. All right, my friends, I hope you're taking care of yourselves. Remember, you can get all of the updates on these headlines at abcnews.com or download the app. And make sure you stay tuned for the briefing room at 3:30 p.m. and World News Prime at 8 p.m. I'm Kimberly Brooks, and I'll see you tomorrow.